Welcome to our webinar presentation on business continuity and disaster recovery. Thank you to the Morgan Hill Chamber of Commerce for allowing us to present today. Samantha Yip, Channel Enablement Director with Kaseya, and I, Armando Garcia, with Dicar Netwroks, will be your presenters. So let's get started. Samantha, can you start us off?
Absolutely. Thank you for that great introduction, Armando, and thank you for the Chamber for having me back as a guest again. I want to start this conversation off with two questions. What would happen if your business lost all its data overnight? Would your business be able to survive without it? This is a real reality for all businesses. We are going to explore how this may happen and also why it's important for everyone here to ask themselves these two questions. The top reason for IT downtime is hardware failure, which is followed closely by connectivity issues and cyber attacks. All of these factors can compromise or destroy your data. It can severely affect your business continuity. It's also worth noting that there is an average life cycle of about 280 days from identification to containment of a breach. And during this time, you may or may not have access to your data. Now we'll talk a little bit about the cost around downtime. The total cost of ransomware attacks can actually be divided into two main costs. First, there's the recovery cost impact. These expenses cover forensic reviews, assistance in rebuilding your servers and workstations. And if there's a ransom that is paid, then there is also that recovery expense. The second is more of an expensive cost. It's the ransomware attack gives you a total downtime of about 3.5 weeks or 136 business hours of downtime for that entire incident. When you add up all the cost of the downtime and the actual ransom itself, it's actually cheaper to think of your business to cover. I apologize, I'm stumbling upon my words. When all the costs are added up, the actual ransom might actually be cheaper than the combined cost to recover and doing the forensic work for the actual ransomware incident. I apologize for that. That shouldn't happen again. I know everybody wants to get out for lunch. So losing data is actually a lot easier than you think. Let's go through some of the most common scenarios. There's about 6 common scenarios that we've seen. First is just human error. So you might spill something on your laptop and that entire laptop and all the data in it might be completely destroyed and not recoverable. Other human errors are just accidental deletion of, accidental deletions of records and other pieces of information your employees might have access to. The second is system networking configuration errors or programming errors within the system and networks. There's also natural disasters. Any natural disasters, we've been experiencing that a lot, from fires through tornadoes, anything like that. That can definitely impact your data and your business as well. There's also hardware and software glitches or failures. Some of that is completely out of your control, right? You might be using cloud data or cloud applications, and hardware failures that happens, particularly sometimes with older, out-of-date hardware that you might be using for the company as well. There's also something called insider threats. Insider threats really just mean threats within your organization. So employees, that could be potential threats, either malicious or unmalicious. They might just be, again, accidentally doing something, deleting something, or they might be intentionally or maliciously threatening the organization internally. 6, and the final one that we see quite a bit of from common scenarios that will cause you to lose data, is malware, ransomware, viruses. They're all lumped into that same kind of bucket because they're all a different form of virus. Malware and ransomware are a virus that you do get from different vectors when it comes to your organization or into your network. So, what if all your data gets accidentally wiped out by your servers? What if there was a malicious cyber criminal that places ransomware on your devices? Again, hurricanes, earthquakes, fires, and all those type of natural disasters can also happen. You have to ask yourself, are you prepared for the worst case scenario? I could tell you from personal experience that hope is not a plan. The answer here is having a business continuity and disaster recovery plan. And I want to dive deeper into that. But right before I dive deeper into that, I want to just kind of share with you real life examples here. When any of those situations occur, 6 scenarios that we kind of went through, there is a state of panic within an organization. And you really don't want to be making decisions and trying to come up with a solution during that panic, during that anxiety that's caused within the organization. So you really want to think about putting together a business continuity and a disaster recovery plan, which we'll talk a little bit more about. So a business continuity plan is a strategic playbook that's created to help an organization maintain or quickly resume business functions in face of a disruption. So there's 3 main components when it comes to a business continuity plan. The first one is recovery personnel. You want to assign people to manage the recovery process, and they will be responsible and also help in getting the system back up and running. The second component is a recovery procedure. You want to outline the strategy to restore your key business functions and also help prioritize any assets that are critical to the business operations. Third component is the actual data backup itself. Your business continuity plan should establish how to get the backup data as well, get the data back up, as well as methods used to back up and recover. We want to talk a little bit about that here. So your disaster recovery plan is a formal document created by your organization that contains detailed instructions on how to respond to an unplanned incident, such as natural disasters, power outages, security incidents, and any other disruptive events. Now, there's kind of two factors or two points when it comes to talking about business continuity and disaster recovery. The terminology you're going to hear when you are trying to secure one of these plans yourself or to produce one of these plans or working with any IT service providers are these 2 terms right here, and they are the recovery point objective. You will hear the acronym RPO. RPO is defined as a maximum amount of data as measured by time that can be lost lost after a recovery from disaster. So failure or a comparable event before data loss will exceed what is acceptable to an organization. So that's the amount of data that you're able to lose in that event that is acceptable to the organization. Now, the recovery time objective, RTO, is the maximum acceptable amount of time for restoring a network or an application and regaining access to that data after an unplanned disruption. These are the 2 key terms you usually hear when people are talking about a business continuity and a disaster recovery plan. So having a backup, having data backup is useless if you cannot retrieve them when you actually need it. They must be accessible to you and your team so that you can use the data and continue operations without your original servers. So maintaining a 3-2-1 backup strategy might seem excessive, but when it comes to your business and the cost of downtime, you never want to take a chance. So your 3-2-1 backup strategy is actually having 3 data copies. You want to have a primary copy and then 2 secondary copies. You want to have those backups in 2 media types. So you want to keep the 2 types of medias. You want local drive, tape, or some sort of network storage. You also want to keep one of those copies offsite. That's the standard strategy that most IT service providers use. So again, some real life example I'll use from my days being an IT service provider. We actually had someone contact my IT service provider. They were experiencing ransomware, unfortunately, and they didn't want to pay ransom. They weren't working with me to try to recover their business and try to continue with this business disruption. So they told me that the IT service provider that they were working with, they had their backup, but they actually never tested that backup. couldn't find the keys, the encryption keys for the backup, and they weren't able to get anything back up and running, and they wanted to see if I could step in and help. Well, at that point, it's too late. Right? Like there isn't anything that I could do to actually get them back up and running. They weren't with me, you know, we didn't do their backup for them, and there was nothing I could do to assist this other IT service provider that helped them with their backup disaster recovery plan. So the only thing that they had asked me to help with was, how do I purchase Bitcoin to try to recover, you know, from this ransomware attack, which is a whole lot of technical things I'm not going to get into. And I really hope that everybody that's here today don't have to encounter that situation. That's why we, you know, we really want to put out there to really think about putting a plan together so that when this incident occurs, you not only follow this 3-2-1 backup strategy, but that you also have someone that you can rely on to be able to get you back up and running, and you're also not panicking when that situation happens, because you really don't want to be paying for that ransom or paying for anything additional if you don't have to. I'm going to pass this on over to Armando now to kind of discuss a little bit more around the critical need for a business continuity and a disaster recovery plan. You're on mute, Armando.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Samantha. Appreciate that. Yes, I'm going to continue with, I also have a couple examples that I'll be sharing towards the end of this presentation. But traditional backups are usually conducted manually, and they take time away from what matters most, protecting your business critical data. And when backups are done automatically, your team can prioritize other tasks. And when it's done automatically, you remove the human error aspect, which is the biggest threat to getting your systems hacked. It's most of the errors why systems get hacked is because of human error. Somebody answered an email the wrong way, a phishing email, or they went out to a website that they shouldn't be at and let a bad guy in. So when these things are done automatically, there's a better assurance that things will be done right. All right, can I get the next slide, Samantha? All right, BCDR automation. If any of your servers go down and your data is lost, you can fail over to designated appliances with minimal downtime until the issue is resolved. What that means is having a business continuity plan in place is, if your system goes down, what are you going to do to maintain or keep the business running? A simple example is a restaurant or a retail environment. When they lose power, they stop selling. I've actually been in stores where, we lost power, sorry, we can't take any credit cards. We can't even take cash because they didn't have any register or anything to sum it up. And I don't know if you're familiar with this or where you are, but most people out there have been conditioned that they can't add, subtract, divide, and multiply without a calculator. So once they lose those technologies, businesses are shut down. So if a business goes down because of power loss, how are you going to continue collecting money? And a couple simple ways to do that is, one, have a UPS system that powers your point of sale system so that you're able to continually collect, and then have a battery powered calculator next door, right next to it, a little register, so you can continue business. That's what a business continuity system is all designed to do, is how do I continue doing business in the face of a disaster, right? And using the 3-2-1 method is also a great way of making sure that I can recover. As mentioned before, conducting backups is typically a manual process. And on top of that, checking to make sure that the backups are successful is a menial task that involves more effort. And this is where most businesses drop the ball. I shouldn't say nobody, very few businesses actually check to make sure the backups actually happen. And that's just one part. The other part is, it did happen, is the data even viable anymore? Is it correct data? In the old days, we used to back up to tapes, and they would keep tapes for years, and they keep rewriting on the tape over and over again. Eventually, the tape would wear out. They'd have to recover data, and the data was just corrupted, and they couldn't recover. So you have to be careful about that part. And also, with an automated system, the backup information can be used to create customized reports for stakeholders that can be used with your insurance. Insurance companies have changed now when it comes to security. There's a compliance that they have to be there, not just the government compliance, but the insurance company will not pay if certain things are not met in the security area. All right, we can go to the next slide, Samantha. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up with a couple of stories. The recovery assurance solution automatically checks each time. So what you want to do is make sure you have a recovery that is making sure, or a backup system that's making sure the data is good and it did happen to keep going. I had a company that was in business for 39 years until I had to close it down. This was up in San Jose. It was a manufacturing business, a contract manufacturing business that had 30 employees. The business was hit with ransomware and had all the data was encrypted. It just froze the business. We couldn't move, and we had a lot of drawings, engineering drawings, proprietary information in there that just got locked up. The ransom, I was able to negotiate with a hacker down to $7,000. Now, that may seem like a lot, but this was 5-6 years ago. And he was a rookie. I think this was the first hit, so he didn't really know how to work with somebody. So I was able to get him down to $7,000. We paid it because we found out, I'll share with you a little bit later what happened, but we paid it. And when we paid it, they gave us the keys. He gave us the keys to decrypt the data. And the data did come back, but it was disorganized. It was kind of all the words in a paragraph in a book were all jumbled. So we got the paragraph headings, but all the words within there, we had to piece them back together. So it took time to bring it back, even though we paid the ransom. So the business was actually down for 3 weeks. And even though we stayed open for another year, we never really fully recovered. We had to shut it down because of all the proprietary information. So that was a lost business. And here's the irony. We were using the 3-2-1 method. And we had three data copies. We had one we were working on. We had one in our storage, in our NAS, network attached storage. And we had one offsite. We had an employee take the tape every week at the end of the week and take it home. It was a USB drive, but take it out. So we rotated every day, every week, 7 days of data. That's all we needed. We figured we could afford to lose 7 days of data and still be able to come back in business. What we didn't realize was that the data backups were not actually happening. We didn't know that till after we got hit with ransomware. We went to go look at the data and found out the last data backup was 6 months prior to the event. So we lost 6 months of data. Nobody was checking the backups. Nobody was checking the validity of the data. So even though we had the 3-2-1 method, so I caution businesses, even though you do these, make sure that you have somebody checking up that's happening. Now, Samantha is with Kaseya. Kaseya does have a product that does make sure the backups are met and checks the validity of data and does all that for you automatically. So that would save you a lot of time. Now, the backups not being verified is really the big key thing, that they're happening and being verified, because there's a lot of garbage data that happens that we're not even going to be aware of. But the good news was the insurance company paid. The insurance company reimbursed us for everything, the ransomware, the bringing the system, pay the IT company to bring it all up. Today, though, insurance companies do not cover these losses unless you are in compliance with their security requirements. So everything's changed. You have to be very careful now. One more. We had a client in Morgan Hill. This is the Morgan Hill Chamber of Commerce. I can't give you their name. I can't give you their name, but they have 35 employees, and they were attacked by ransomware. And we had a 3-2-1 system in place, automatically backing up. We're verifying the data, and we had them back up operationally in 24 hours. So 24 hours, 80% of systems, and within 48 hours, we had 100% of the systems back up with 35 employees. How, and you may wonder, well, if you were a security company and you had this all locked down, what happened? How did somebody break in? One of their employees actually went to a Chinese website to get a cheaper component, reduce the cost, and allow that person in. As I mentioned earlier, human error is the biggest threat to security. And it was not intentional. He was actually doing his job, looking for a better cost on a component, went to a Chinese website that was fictitious, and it was a hacker, got in and destroyed it. Destroyed the data by encrypting it, but we were able to bring everything back without having to pay a ransom. And we're back up and running 100% in 48 hours. All right, next slide, Samantha. So time is money. So if you're open to it, let's talk about a BCDR system for you at no obligation. We have an assessment that we provide. It's an assessment that determines where are you on certain aspects of your network, what's critical, what you think, what's the matrix that points out, or graphs, what is urgent, what's not urgent, what takes a lot of work, what doesn't have do a lot of work. And then we break it down to 3 priorities that you can take advantage of, or go ahead and develop the projects. So we'll sit down with you, develop those projects with you. And that is, of course, no obligation, no cost to chamber members. So let us know if you're interested in that. And that wraps up my portion. Do you have any? I see a couple of questions here. What are the presentations on Google Drive and on cloud-based CRM? That is a great question, Avi. Thank you for that. There is no backup. Microsoft Office 365, one of our clients is, I can mention this, is the city of Santa Cruz, and they have thousands of employees with Microsoft Office 365 email. There is no backup for Office 365 email. So anything in the cloud, unless they specifically tell you that they're backing it up, there is no backup. Well, I just sold them Veeam backup for each individual so they can back it up. A city needs to maintain backups for all their emails. They have to go far back if something happens. So be careful with any kind of cloud, CRM or Google Drive. Make sure, ask them and verify that it is being backed up and you have access to those backups. The other question, also in some circumstances, a criminal threat to release customer data and personal data. So it's not only the backup. What do you do in such situation? Well, there's a big medical firm that just got hit with that, and they paid the ransom, and they brought back. But then the ransom, the attacker went out to each individual and told them they're going to release their medical information, and they didn't pay up. There's nothing you can do about that one. That one is difficult. Once they have that data, it's done. So big and large corporations, and that's just an example. But even the large corporations that spend thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars, in some cases millions of dollars for data protection, the hackers still get in and get the data. So it's something you really have to be aware of. But if that happens, I'm sorry, there really is no solution for that. Hopefully they don't release it, even if they charge you a ransom and you pay that, because even when you pay a ransom, there's no guarantee that they will not release that data. So hopefully that answers that question, Avi. Thank you for that question. Do we have any others? Let's see, we have here the chat. So preventative is a key. Exactly, preventive, not just preventative, but actually anticipating that you've already been hit with ransomware. Anticipating that, and what are you going to do if it does happen? That really has to be uppermost in your mind, because preventative is key. With the you prevent something, but then who's verifying that the prevention is taking place? Who's verifying that the patches are being made in your software? Who's verifying that the data is still correct? So preventative is great, but you also have to verify. Who was it? I think it was Ronald Reagan when he was working or negotiating with Nikita Khrushchev. He said, trust, but verify. So that's key. Let's see. And that's why it's important to identify, to offer identity theft protection to your employees. That is correct. Avi is with the member of the chamber and provides security service, legal services that are very great rate, economical, available. So if you want to protect, you can reach out to Avi through the chamber directory, or you can reach out to Dicar Netwroks if you have any more questions or want to address, or you can have your the diagnostic or the assessment done. Reach out to us, find us through the network, through the directory at the Chamber of Commerce. There's a great online directory there. So we have any other questions? I think one in the chat. I think it is. Oh yes, thank you, Lori. Lori mentioned it's Legal Shield. That's the company that Avi's with. It's economical. I'm going to take a stab at this. We have it. I think it's $40 or $50 a month. It gives you access to that. So that's another layer that I would definitely suggest you add in onto your business. Very economical, and that covers all of our employees. So with that, if there's no more questions, I think thank you very much for attending today's webinar. Samantha, do you have any final words?
I'm just going to say there's a lot of, we talked about preventing. We've specifically talked about BCDR strategy and a solution, but, ransomware, we've talked a lot about that during the question period. It's about preventing. So this is just one part of a larger picture, right? We really want to prevent these things from happening. Those 6 scenarios that I kind of mentioned, we want to prevent those things from happening. And there's a lot of things that your IT service provider your IT team can do to prevent this thing from happening in the first place. The BCDR component is kind of your last line of defense. Having everything else fails, you really want to have this, you really want to have a strategy in place to be able to continue your business operations, to continue and recover from that disaster. I think that's just my final word.
All right. Was there another slide, or is that it, Samantha? I don't have
That is it. That
it.
was it. Yes. The other slide is just the email.
All right, you can reach us at sales@dicarnetworks.com, or as I mentioned, go on the online directory at the chamber and find us there. Thank you very much for attending, and all the best security to you.